and welcome back to Modern Medieval the podcast. I'm Ella.
And I'm Megan. And this week we are starting the first part of a kind of like two-parter episode couplet, if you will, on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yeah.
This is because, the film has recently been released, at least in America, released on July 30th. It was meant to release here in the UK on August 6th, and that has been pushed back to an indefinite.
No. Oh, that's so annoying.
All of my friends and I are fucking mad, to say the least.
Is there, what's the reason? Do you know what the reasoning is?
No forking idea. And this is like the third time or something that it's been pushed back because of the pandemic and everything.
Is it because they won't be able to have like a proper, what are they called? Publications or?
Cinemas are open and everything. So I looked into it, I should have had it up, but it's just frustrating because I've been seeing, reviews going through for the US and it's been getting really good reviews and people are really appreciating it. And it's apparently doing a really good job of capturing kind of the essence of the story.
Oh, that's a first.
Yeah, director David Lowry has apparently done like a really beautiful job. And for those of you who don't know, David Lowry directed A Ghost Story, or he was the editor of that, Pete's Dragon, and some other things. But he's a really beautiful director and just has like a very great vision and like is able to capture, the atmosphere, just like Denis Villeneuve, who did Blade Runner 2049, has the new Dune coming out, which looks fucking epic. I'm so excited. Just some directors can harness that vision.
Yeah.
So I'm going to see if we can't find a way to, I have some connections with people who get like review screeners and stuff like that, because our intention initially was to talk about the medieval text in this episode, and then in the next following episode, talk about the movie once we'd both seen it. But that kind of got blown up. But we've still done the work for the medieval aspect, so That's what we're doing today.
Yeah, to be fair, we do have a little bit of time, as we'll be taking a short break in August anyway, so hopefully by the time that we're back it will be out.
I doubt that, but yeah, maybe we'll have had a chance to watch it. Or you're in Italy, it might be in theaters there. I'm not sure what the Italian release date is.
Oh, that's not literally. I feel like at the moment every country seems very, very problematic and annoying, so you never know. Maybe it will be. I'll let you know.
Yeah. So Ello, though, for this episode asked if we could do her interviewing me kind of on my thoughts on the story.
Yeah. So the reasoning behind this is because this is very controversial and I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm not a big fantasy person. So I will watch these things and I will read them, and obviously this is a medieval poem, so it's interesting, but I think that as this was Megan's idea, I'm kind of interested in knowing, because she's got a very beautiful brain and a very beautiful way of thinking about certain things. So it kind of seems my opinions on this are very rudimental. So like, I'd rather hear her, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. This is the first that Ella's explaining her rationale behind it. So thank you.
Yeah. So I guess obviously before we delve into the poem, I was just wondering, is this your first time reading it?
So no, we had in my year 6, so 6th grade, we went and read like Arthurian cycles. Don't remember the name of the book we read. I really want to say it was by E.B. White. That could be so wrong, so don't.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there was a Sir Gawain, adapted for young adults version there. So we read it then, and other than knowing that I read it, I don't have any like recollection of like the story.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember that's when we went to like medieval times was part of that process. We had to make a shield with like our own coat of arms, and mine was a fox, a red fox. And it was like all glittery and stuff. I remember I was really proud of it. And then my sophomore year of high school was like Old English up until like the 1800s or something like that. So
Right.
that was when we read Beowulf, which, as I said, I like really didn't do the reading for. And Sir Gawain was another one that we read. But yet again, I don't think I read the whole thing. I read most of it, if not all of it, though.
Right.
But again, I didn't like, I remember the plot points, but I wasn't like, oh, this is so cool, yada yada. I don't think we read it in my Chaucer course, or not Chaucer, but like Old English course at community college. But then again, as I've admitted, I usually just like pieced out halfway through the class each week and like did minimal reading. So maybe it was on the roster and I just didn't do it.
Enough. Yeah.
I usually just chose like one thing and was like, this is what I'm gonna write my essay on, and then just checked out for the rest of it. So
fair enough.
I got, A's on everything, but oops, bad Megan. Bad. No one followed that example. It was naughty. So yeah, I reread it in its entirety for this. I've listened to medievalists.net did an episode on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, so I listened to that fairly recently, with like in the last year. So I had that fresh in my mind. Talking with friends about the movie coming out, watching the trailers, like reading about, press
Reviews,
coming up and everything. Yeah. So then last night I read it properly, a translation of it on the Camelot Project through the University of Rochester.
Right.
Which also has lots of other like medieval saints' lives and things. It's a really great project. And so I read a translation by Jessie Weston, and this is from like the beginning of the 20th century, so 1900, and it's a prose version. So
I read a prose version as well. I'll tell you who I read it. This person had published it in the 80s.
Okay, so you read it later.
Jessie Lee Weston. Is that the name you said? I'm sorry. I feel like I checked out when you said the name.
Jessie Weston is who I read.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe it was like a reprint of the same version or something. So yeah, that's my like encounter story. Ella, what's your
well, literally my encounter with this is you.
Okay, so this was your first time reading it and everything.
Yeah, I feel like with this podcast, it's really pushing me to be out of like the reevaluate the things I like, and like give things a second chance. But I think because I don't have like the childhood passion of it, it's a new moment for me, so I don't really ever know what to think of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, I'm glad this is one of the best, like a lot of people really love this story.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed rereading it, to be quite fair. So
yeah, cool. And so what's your favorite passage, if you have one?
My favorite passage. So I really loved the section that talks about the transfer of the seasons. It's quite unusual in medieval romances to have such an awareness of autumn and winter. Usually there's lots of talk about spring and summer, the blossoming and blooming and changing. But in this, to have such a beautiful way of experiencing the change of the seasons after the Green Knight, comes and does the challenge and everything. Very much appreciated that. I guess before I like kind of read some of that passage, we should give a brief summary of.
Sorry, yes, you're right.
Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I don't know if you want to do it or if you want me to do it.
I don't mind. We can do it together.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of read off the British Library version of what is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight about.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's an anonymous poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We don't know who the poet is, though often this anonymous poet is paired with the poet of Pearl, which we will eventually get
Read.
to and discuss in later episodes. I've never read it, so
Neither have I.
the poem only survives in a single manuscript at the British Library, caught in MS Nero AX, and it was copied out by a scribe who was unlikely to have also been the author. So, there's a gap between that. At the beginning of the 15th century, and the manuscript, as I was saying, also contains 3 other poems, Patience, Cleanness, and Pearl, which are stylistically similar to Gawain and the Green Knight and are therefore thought to be the work of the same poet. And studying this poem's dialect allows us to pinpoint where in like the Cheshire area in the Northwest Midlands region of England this poet is from. So Chaucer wrote in his contemporary Middle English moment, London dialect, which is what the closest to what we speak now. So this has some Old Norse language in it. It has Welsh, English. It's this really interesting concoction. And I just think that's fascinating because it shows, even though we're not that far apart, at least being an American from an American perspective, just how different language is and how fluid it is. And I haven't read the original Middle English.
Neither have I.
I am still learning how to read Middle English, and the Middle English I'm learning how to like be familiar with is the London, more kind of quote unquote standard one, because it's different. I tried the first couple sentences and I went, this will take me way too long. Someday. So that's just like a brief history of it. And then, so what is it about? So Sir Gawain and the Green Knight tells the story of a young knight at the legendary court of King Arthur. The poem opens with a description of a Christmas feast at Camelot, the Arthurian court. And during the feast, a mysterious green knight with green hair and green skin riding a green horse arrives and challenges the assembled crowd to a bizarre game, which sets off a chain of events in which Gawain faces trials and temptations. And the game is known as kind of like the beheading game.
Yeah.
Which sounds self-explanatory. So basically the Green Knight comes in and he's like, I have a challenge. I will let you, whichever knight comes to me, one blow to me with my axe, which is this like huge, sharp, like mega axe that's like 4 feet wide or something crazy. And he says, but the deal is, in a year and a day, so New Year's Day, you have to come find me and I get to deal you
another challenge.
A blow. And no one, it's just like crickets and silence. And then Arthur's like, oh, I'll do it. And then Gawain, who is supposed to be this very kind, considerate, and modestly courageous knight, he's also the nephew of Arthur, says, no, I will do it. The king of the land shouldn't have to take on this
challenge.
Yeah, this challenge. And so, Gawain goes up, gets the knife, or the axe, and beheads the Green Knight. And you think, well, that's it. And there's this kind of great passage where the head was chopped off so violently that it rolls on the ground and spurts blood off the feet of quite a few people.
Yeah.
And then the knight's beheaded body just goes and picks up the head, and the head starts speaking and is like, in a year's time, look for the Green Chapel, and rides away. And, so there are these really interesting supernatural elements, and the story continues, and we get this passage. So I'll say the passage. Should I say the passage, or should I continue with the overall summary and then return to the passage? What would you like me to do, Hello?
I think if you were to read it now, it would make sense.
Okay. So after the Green Knight rides away, they have this huge celebratory feast, because it's New Year's Eve, season of Christ's birth on earth, God becoming man, etc., etc. And so here we go. It says, for Yule was now overpast, and the year after, each season in its turn following the other. For after Christmas comes crabbed Lent, that will have fish for flesh and simpler cheer. But then the weather of the world chides with winter. The cold withdraws itself, the clouds uplift, and the rain falls in warm showers on the fair plains. Then the flowers come forth, meadows and grove are clad in green. The birds make ready to build and sing sweetly for solace of the soft summer that follows thereafter. The blossoms bud and blow in the hedgerows rich and rank, and noble notes enough are heard in the fair woods. After the season of summer, with the soft winds, when zephyr breathes lightly on seeds and herbs, joyous indeed is the growth that waxes thereout when the dew drips from the leaves beneath the blissful grace of the bright sun. But then comes harvest and hardens the grain, warning it to wax ripe ere the winter. The drought drives the dust on high, flying over the face of the land. The angry wind of the welkin wrestles with the sun. The leaves fall from the trees and light upon the ground, and all brown are the groves that but now were green, and ripe is the fruit that once was flower. So the year passes into many yesterdays, and winter comes again, as it needs no sage to tell us.
It's actually fucking amazing because it's exactly the same passage that I thought was like the most amazing, but most striking.
Oh, that's cool that we both. So for me, with kind of this environmental angle that I'm currently looking at my research, this to me just really stood out, especially just that last sentence. So the year passes into many yesterdays.
Yeah.
That is
poetic.
So poetic and beautiful.
Yeah.
And when I was reading it out loud, I don't know if you caught on to, there was alliteration and internal rhymes going on. So briefly before we continue with the rest of the story, it's like an interlude. As I said earlier, the poem is written in a certain type of alliterative verse.
Metrical, yeah.
So it's a very complex form. It uses internal rhyme, also known as alliteration, as well as this like style of alliteration. It uses a metrical form called the bob and wheel. So this means each stanza ends with a short half line of only 2 syllables.
Right.
Known the bob. And then that is followed by a mini stanza of longer lines, which rhyme internally. And that is called the wheel. And this complicated form is used for over 2,500 lines of verse in this poem. So impressive.
I wonder, that must be like quite a lot of, you can do quite a lot of things with it if you were to do it, if you were to read it, if the translations of it were like, in trying to mimic the rhythm and the metrics and stuff, because obviously we're reading this in prose.
Yes, I agree. And I do commend this translator because we do get a little bit of some of those poetic aspects.
Yeah.
But also just visually, the way that it would look on the page, kind of ebbing and flowing in and out of itself.
Yeah.
But
I have a lot of admiration. I mean, it's quite interesting because obviously, like the last episode we did was on Beowulf, and we did like a similar kind of thing. I've got a lot of admiration for these poets or authors who choose to translate such text, because it's quite a challenge.
100%. And I think it also just shows outside of the standard stereotype of the Middle Ages, the being dark ages. They were doing highly skilled linguistic kind of puzzles and games and had immense skill. And I'm still learning how immense this skill is, because we're always taught that the English language was really born with Shakespeare,
Chaucer.
Chaucer, who was at this time, but Chaucer was special and blah blah blah. And it's like, yes, that's very true, but there is this beautifully rich history and other texts that debunk the myth, of a dark and dreary, uninformed Middle Ages.
No, agreed. Also, I think this kind of is still kind of like a little apartheid, but like the in this moment in our history where we're so out of touch with the environment, and we are really seeing the repercussions of like our food chain and how we treat the environment, I find it so beautifully refreshing that in the Middle Ages, like especially in this passage, like there's such an awareness of how it works, and it feels like everyone's kind of in touch with like at one with nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like man has to cohabit with the natural forces of nature. There is no chemicals and manipulation aside
Yeah.
from, you know, plowing a field and planting. But aside from that, like you can't control if it's going to flood, if the sun's going to bake the
Yeah.
seeds. Like you have to live in harmony. So
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that the mystical nature of this poem really does harness that just throughout. I mean, so kind of segueing with this idea
Yeah.
into the second half of the story, right?
Yeah.
So the passage we've just discussed is the pivot to, okay,
The second part.
it's
Yeah.
October, it's All Hallows Eve, so end of Halloween to November 1st, and Gawain has to leave on his journey because he doesn't really know how far he has to go to find this green chapel with the Green Knight. So he apparently on his, journeys, they're like, oh yeah, he battles lots of dogs and dragons and demons, but there's not enough time here to discuss this. This isn't what this is about, which I found kind of funny. And it talks about the hardship and again, nature versus Gawain, like Gawain having to coexist in nature because he doesn't have a roof over his head. So he's sleeping in the sleeting rain against rocks and getting soaking wet, and just kind of his endurance with all this. But he comes across this like beautiful castle in the forest, and it talks about the architecture and all these like white turrets. It's this pure, building with the moat around it and this beautiful forest. And the people there welcome him with open arms. And it's around Christmas time. It's, I think, Christmas Eve, actually. He's like,
yeah,
praise. So there are definitely Christian tones in this story. He's like, the day of Jesus' birth, I need to be like, oh Lord, please send me somewhere so that I can respect you and do mass and everything and have a day of rest. This kind of magically appears, this castle. And so Gawain quickly becomes like an integral part of this castle. The host and his wife are very kind and jovial, and there's lots of great food and meat, etc. And they're also like very Christianity pious. And Gawain's like, unfortunately, I can only stay the one day because I have to continue on. And our host is like, no, it's fine. What you're looking for is only 2 miles away, so you can stay here till day of. So following this, the host, whose name we don't know, he's just like
the host,
Lord of the Manor, the host. Yeah. He's like, okay, let's make a bet. So for day 1, so this is sometime after Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go on a hunt tomorrow. Whatever I capture is yours.
Yeah.
But then you have to reciprocate. So whatever you get in the day becomes mine.
Yeah.
And he's like, but take this opportunity just to lay in bed, Gawain. Rest. You need it. You have a big ordeal coming. You've traveled so far. Relax. So like the expectation of the host is like, he's not going to get that much, So the first day, the host goes out and goes on this epic hunting quest for deer, not stags, but does, because it goes on how capturing a hart is not allowed in that season. Apparently there are lots of passages about the hunt that are very technical that our author kind of said, unless you're interested in like hunting in the Middle Ages, it's too technical and gory and like people don't really care. And so while the host is out hunting with the hounds and the horns and everything, adventure and adrenaline, Gawain's just like laying in bed and hears the lady of the manor come in. He like pretends to be asleep, which is really funny. And they have like good banter, because then he like pretends to wake up and she goes, oh, Gawain, what kind of knight are you that you aren't awakened when somebody comes in, and she's like flirting with him and stuff. And he's proving his virtue. He's like, I'm
not going to do that.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm embarrassed. I should change. And then we can go talk. And she's like, no, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. So they continue talking. And on parting, she's like, you let a woman in your room and sit on your bed and don't say that you expect a kiss on her departure. Kind of being like, you saucy boy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so she kisses him and leaves. So, then Gawain gets dressed the rest of the day, hangs out with the people of the manor. Host comes home and is like, in front of everybody, huzzah, look at all this that I've captured. Gawain, this is yours. What have you received today? And Gawain goes up, and it says he tries to very courteously kiss the host. And the host is like, who has given you this kiss, you lucky boy? And Gawain's like, that's not part of the deal. And the host's like, okay, fair. But yeah, look, he's like, I didn't have to say who, because he's also trying to protect his own virtue as well as that of the lady of the manor, and not be like, oh, it was your wife that kissed me.
This tends to happen quite a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. Temptation. It's, a lot. So the lady of the manor is this like young, beautiful woman who's fairest of them all, golden hair.
To Beowulf, really.
Yeah. The very standard kind of, princess figure, but she's also a femme fatale in a way in this story. Kind of like just in the way that she is very sexual and witty and kind of pushes these boundaries. So before they go to bed, the host is like, same thing tomorrow? And Gawain's like, sure. So host goes out, and we get this whole epic battle of hunting a boar, which show up a lot in medieval literature because they were a bit larger back then and very vicious. I mean, their tusks.
They're still vicious.
Yeah, rip people apart.
Vicious, so I can imagine.
Games of Thrones, with Baratheon and blah, all that. So there's like a big long thing. And Lady of the Manor comes in again to Gawain's room, and they have more good chats and stuff, but he gets 2 kisses from her in this chatter time. Again, they're both done very non promiscuous isn't the word I'm looking for, but like they're done in a way where it's not like, oh, Gawain, you shouldn't have, it's still kind of in this teary territory. So later that night, Lord of the house comes home, and he's like, look at this boar. What did you get? And Gawain gives him 2 kisses. And Lord of the manor is like, you are so lucky. Oh, look at you.
Oh.
And so then, after dinner drinks, the wine in front of the fire, and the Lord is like, same thing tomorrow? And Gawain's kind of like, I shouldn't, I need to get prepared for my trip. And the Lord Mayor's like, come on, have some fun, have some spirit. You aren't quite leaving yet. And so Gawain's like, okay, fine, yes. So the following morning, same thing. Host gets up really early, goes out into the woods, and it's a big fox chase.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, I just learned about this, but they call the fox renard.
Yeah.
Renard in the
like in French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And renard is actually a folk figure in French lore.
Yeah.
The kind of like wily fox, and there's a whole canon of medieval tales and contemporary tales about Renard the fox and his adventures.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually. That's interesting.
Medievalist.net did an episode on this very recently because there's a new series coming out by a contemporary author kind of reimagining Renard. Sounds really interesting. Also, yes, that is why Robin Hood by Disney is a fox. Disney was going to do a Renard the fox, and then they thought the story was a bit too not suitable for children, so then they went with Robin Hood instead.
Right.
But if you look at the story of Renard the fox and then Robin Hood, the animation and everything, and like who's what character, and so
that's so cool.
Really interesting. We should look into that further, but for our audience.
Yeah.
So Renard, is being chased and by the host and the hounds. And so Lady of the Manor comes in again, and she's like, Gawain, you leave on the morrow or whatever, take a gift from me, since you have nothing to give me because everything you have you need for your conflict. So first she tries to give him this like giant, huge ruby or something like that in gold, and he's like, this is way too much. No, can't take that from you. I shouldn't take anything from you, but especially not something like that.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I still want to give you something. Here, take. So in the story, it's a girdle. And I had to Google this because I was like, a girdle is a woman's like shaping underwear. A girdle is also not quite a scarf, but the tie of a robe, like a dressing gown.
Yeah.
It's like the sash. So she gives him this green sash that has like gold embroidery and everything, and she says, "Here, take this. Whoever wears this around his waist is not indestructible, but cannot be harmed or killed by any weapon." And Gawain inside is like, "Oh, this could be useful. Like maybe this will prevent me from being killed."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I can't take it." But he's just trying to play a game with her at this point.
Yeah.
So eventually, after her constantly being like, "No, you should take it," he takes it. And so that evening, and she also gives him 3 kisses during their conversation. So that evening, host comes in and he's like, "Today was not so good. All I have is this tattered fox," because they skin the fox, and the skins. It was not as exciting as a boar and things like that. And Gawain gives him 3 kisses, but not the sash.
Yeah.
And so, there's the final hurrah farewell for the final day. And in the morning, Gawain gets up. He is led by a servant to the beginning of the entrance of the Green Chapel. And the servant is like, "If you run away now, I won't tell anyone, because the Green Knight is known as nothing but vicious, no mercy. Every man that goes here dies. Save yourself."
Yeah.
And Gawain is like, "I could not come this far and not be courageous. That is dishonor, etc., etc." So basically proving that he will walk to death as a friend and accept whatever comes. But also secretly being like, "I also have the sash under my armor. We'll see how this goes and if this is true or not." So the servant guy leaves him. He's like, "Well, good luck. Bye." And Gawain goes into this really interesting, spooky, like crag area that is marked by like burnt trees and burnt rocks that then leads along this stream to this mound that has an entrance on both sides. It's really spooky and has an atmosphere of danger and kind of the supernatural or the preternatural. Like it feels like a different realm. Gawain, goes up and he says, "I am here. I am searching for the Green Knight. Is this the Green Chapel?" And the Green Knight is like, "I am here." And he's across the river and he has the giant axe because before he arrives, Gawain just hears that like sound of the whetting of the axe, which if you've ever seen Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, that was all that was going on my head, was the sound of the executioner of Buckbeak, like whetting the beheading chopper axe thing. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that sound. Better than the white noise sound that I made. And then the Green Knight like uses his axe as a pole vault to like launch over the river, and like just this kind of really crazy feat of immense strength and agility. And Gawain's like, "I am here," and he bares his bare neck, and the Green Knight is like, "All right, I'm gonna go," and Gawain swerves at the last minute, and the Green Knight is like, "This is not Gawain, that was cowardly." And Gawain's like, I'm so sorry, give me another chance." Basically, he's like, "I did it once, I won't do it again." So that shows kind of like humanity, right? Like, and so the knight goes down and swings the axe and stops above Gawain's neck. He doesn't get it, and Gawain does not flinch. And then again, the Green Knight swings the axe and like cuts part of the neck of Gawain, but does not chop it off. And at this point, Gawain's like, "That's too much. You've done more than your single blow. Like, I have met my duty. I've done what's needed." And it comes to be told that the Green Knight is the lord of the manor. That it's the same person. And he goes, each blow was meant to be for like a different act of your experience at the castle. And he said, the last one was because you did not give me the green sash. And he's like, because my wife was in on it and I told her to do this, like, she's been your enemy the entire time. But in like a friendly way, but like testing Gawain throughout all of this. Will he be honest? And the Green Knight's like, the sash you wear is mine. So he's like, that's how I know. And Gawain immediately goes, you are right. Here is the sash. Give another blow to me. It's what I deserve. I have been dishonest. I do not
deserve it.
Yeah. And at that, the Green Knight is like, no, let us be friends. You so quickly admitted your wrongs and act like a, virtuous man. Keep the sash as a gift from me, but also a totem or a token of remembrance for this journey of yours and your cowardice at that moment, but then also your honesty in the end when it really mattered. And we find out that the Green Knight has been charmed by Morgana Le Fay. So Morgana Le Fay from Arthur's half sister.
Yeah.
And it was to like test this game of. So basically, I think it was more than anything Morgana testing Guinevere at some point. There's like a whole section on that. But what's interesting is that the Morgana Le Fay character, which here in this story is like the motif of this whole enchantment, her and Guinevere's animosity, is not an invention of this author, but it's also found in the Merlin, probably the earliest of the Arthurian prose romances.
Yeah.
And then in a later version of this poem, written in ballad form, contained in the Percy MS, Morgana Le Fay does not appear. And it's just like interesting that she's there and not there. And also the character she's depicted as like this old crone lady of the like grandmother of the lady. But Arthur's still young, which doesn't compute in regards to the legends. They're like the same age. So maybe it was a misunderstanding. But anyway, so Green Knight's like, yeah, this was done just to test everything. Hooray. And come back to the house. Come see your aunt. Like, no hard feelings. And Gawain's basically like, no, I need to go home. It's been a long time. I'm ready to go home. And he thanks the knight. They depart as friends. Gawain goes home, tells the story, has the sash around him, and it kind of becomes part of his emblem. That and then the pentangle, which is the star that all the lines overlap with one another, so there's no beginning or end.
Yeah.
And if you read the number 5, that is very important in this story, like the 5 virtues, the 5 senses, 5 like trials, all the kind of stuff. And so everyone in the court eventually like has the green sash in honor of Gawain and this journey. And it's, bright green with gold. And basically it ends with like, all is good. And the last, lines of the poem are, or the version I have, maybe yours is the same or not, but I'll read it because it's short. So it ends with this bob, is many a venture herefore hath fallen such as this. May he that bear the crown of thorn bring us into his bliss. Amen. So it ends on this very Christian note, kind of like, oh, yep, this was like a whole Christian allegory, medieval romance story of supernatural and environment, but also like Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was actually quite interesting because throughout the story there is like a lot of Christianity in it. It's not kind of like a pretext. It's very much embedded in it.
Yeah, it's very fluidly embedded in it. Like when they talk about the pentangle in the story and everything, and how it's like, Christ's 5 wounds.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is like very present. And of course it happens on Christmas Eve.
Christmas
Day. And like they go to mass.
Yeah. I also quite liked, I mean, I don't know if in your version it had the same, but like there's mention of Yule, which obviously is like the Swedish Nordic.
It's considered quote unquote pagan. Yeah. Well, and like the Green Knight is very much kind of like the Green Man.
Yeah.
And Germanic lore, which is still around. So is this just fascinating intertwining of environment and human and Christianity and older religions, quote unquote, like pagan religions, right? Like,
and correct me if I'm wrong, this is like something that you're kind of looking into, right? Like the environment and the effect of the environment and sainthood, right? Not wrong, right?
Kind of. I'm looking at the porosity of bodies and how.
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the one. Okay.
Oh, was that it? That was your question? I thought you were gonna. Okay. So yeah, no, like in this, it is really interesting to me that the Green Knight, it's a charm, but that it's a man and this kind of embodiment of ultimate nature.
Yeah.
And all the green, the verdure of that and everything. So I really, really enjoyed reading this. I highly recommend it. What were your final kind of feelings or thoughts, Ello, considering that you're not the biggest?
I thought it was really interesting. I really like these translations. I find them really fascinating because obviously it's like a kind of quote unquote a take on the story. And it was really enjoyable. I feel like as a person I have less thoughts on it, but I really enjoy hearing you, like, because I feel like I feel like there's been such a progression in your way of thinking of the medieval in this past year, obviously with your PhD. So it's been really interesting to hear you develop these like concepts of like porosity of the body and the saint body and environment and all that. It's quite like, it's really fascinating, and I really hope that the audience thinks the same.
Oh, thank you. And yet, like with this, we're not, done with Sir Gawain, because
no, we're not.
think there are so many different interpretations that you can have. I mean, Carolyn Dinshaw, the queer scholar, who is the one that kind of talks about Pulp Fiction, the medieval, that really got us going with this, has homoerotic interpretations of this story.
There are
feminist interpretations. Gawain's journey is seen so many different ways. There are post-colonial interpretations. And, of course, Christian. And then the traditional, this as a medieval romance.
Yeah.
Romance in a medieval genre is not just what we think of as romance. It's like an adventure. Usually it's the knight's journey, and rather than I love you and you love me. And that's always kind of secondary, or perhaps like the plot propeller.
Yeah, agreed.
So whenever we get the chance to
watch the film
and kind of return to this and use that film, like we did with Beowulf, as our vehicle for a modern or contemporary interpretation of the medieval and how they work with like productive friction with or against one another, and how they reverberate and resonate, I think will be really interesting, because
agreed,
especially with how the reviews, at least the headlines, I haven't read reviews because I don't want to spoil it for myself.
No, agreed. Yeah, it makes sense.
But with people saying like that this version of the Green Knight is grungy and dark and kind of gory, but also like really harnesses the mystical aspects. And I'm really excited for that, because we don't want like a repeat of Guy Ritchie's King Arthur.
No. Actually, I would watch that, but I can imagine it wasn't great.
I mean, I might make us watch it and talk about it sometime, just because it's on Netflix and it's there. But so this is meant to be kind of, I saw one, I think it was like a Twitter thing, and it said something like, it was the Seventh Seal meets, it was, I don't remember what the other bit was. It was something kind of like very contemporary and funny, but so it has this artistic aspect of the Seventh Seal and kind of that darkness, existential darkness. I'll have to find it and like retweet it or something.
Okay.
So as Ello said, for us to kind of conclude, we will be taking a break for, what is it, a month, Ello?
Yeah.
I might do some like bonus episodes depending on how long like the Pearl poem is. Maybe I'll just do a reading of that. I might just do a reading of Gawain. We'll see how I'm feeling and everything, just to kind of keep us in your feed. I don't have the most podcasty poetic voice, or I'm the best reader, but just to kind of keep us going and make our paying for our editing software worthwhile.
No, it's been, we'll come back. I'll come back very refreshed. That is my hope.
Definitely need it. So yeah, in the meantime, please like catch up or re-listen and send your thoughts
our way,
questions, queries, suggestions, etc. our way via all the media we have.
Yeah, and if in order to do that, please know that we are all on most social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, email. On Facebook, we've got both a page and a group. We've got a page called Modern Medieval Podcast and a group called Modern Medieval Podcast. We've got an Instagram where we're quite active, and the handle is podcast.modern.medieval. We can also email us, and that's always very handy and helpful for us. So just please email us on modern.medieval.podcast@gmail.com. And if you've enjoyed these episodes, please know that you can listen to them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Just type Modern Medieval Podcast. And finally, we've got a Twitter account, which Megan mainly deals with.
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can follow us at medieval_modern. Try to keep us kind of active there, but it ebbs and flows. But yes, tweet at us, link us or hashtag us or whatever it is, include us. And we do love hearing from you. So it could be a meme, a GIF,
whatever you want,
whatever, anything. So yes, thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, I'm Megan.
And I'm Ella, and this is Modern Medieval, the podcast.